Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching and you're also participating in the 5th Annual Technical Teachers Conference hosted by the Sasol Foundation. Now, I hope you got yourself a warm cup of coffee. Ngoba uyazi ubusika buyabanda ngaphandle, so don't be heroes. Keep warm so that you can really be focused and active during these next few sessions. Our segment now takes the form of an open discussion with our presenter. He's going to be discussing and helping you review the 2020 Matric performance in technical maths and science. So without further ado, let me introduce to you a man you heard from earlier on. He was introducing our Honourable Deputy Minister of Basic Education, but now he's going to give you a comprehensive review of those Matric results, and also motivate for a strategy that can be undertaken for all of you educators as you move forward in the discipline. Please welcome warmly Dr Seliki Tlhabane, who's the Chief Director, MST and Curriculum in the Department of Basic Education.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings once more, and it gives me great pleasure to be invited to come and handle this specific topic of reviewing the 2020 Matric performance in Tech Maths and Technical Science and other technology subjects. And I'm excited to be addressing our teachers, colleague teachers, who are on the forefront of teaching these subjects, who have the experience on the ground on what is exciting about the subjects and what are the difficulties that are experienced by the learners. And I also wish to open by encouraging all the teachers to take their vaccinations as the vaccination campaign has started. That is our presentation outline, and I would not spend much time on it, but we'll start with the strategic direction. Where do we take our mandate from and our targets, and conclude with challenges and future plans. The key document that we derive our mandate from is the National Development Plan of 2011. And it implores upon us as a country that we need to explore different parts of the education system, and that these different parts must work together in allowing learners to take different pathways that offer high quality learning opportunities and that would usher them into the mainstream economy for them to be able to participate as skilled laborers and innovators. The NDP further gives us targets that previous speakers spoke about, that says one of those targets set for 2014, which has already passed, in the delivery agreement signed by the Minister of Higher Education and Training, is to produce 10,000 artisans per year. This target can be met with concerted effort and adequate funding. The NDP proposes a target of 30,000 artisans by 2030, which is just about 9 years from now, that we should be producing 10,000 artisans as a country supplying to the job market. And we are far from achieving that target, which calls on all of us to work very hard, fold our sleeves, and push as hard as we can and come up with strategies and approaches that are going to assist us to achieve this. And the classroom becomes a very critical engine that is going to assist us to achieve this goal. Colleagues, the implementation of technical subject specializations, as you all know, started in January of 2016, when we introduced these subjects in grade 10. And this included technical mathematics and technical sciences as the 10th and the 11th subject. We also introduced EGD, and the EGD, as you know, that it has to be offered by every child who is offering this stream of subjects. It's compulsory for all the learners. The first cohort of the grade 12s for technical subjects, including technical mathematics and technical sciences, set for the Matric in 2018. The graphs that are going to follow after here show that we are not doing so well. and that there is a decline in participation, meaning the number of learners who are offering these subjects, particularly technical subjects, specializations, from 2018 and 2020. And with specific focus on technical mathematics, that is not doing so well. Now, I'm just quickly going to run through the participation of the specializations, the 9 specializations, starting with civil technology, starting from 2018 right up to 2020. The blue representing the 2018, the orange 2019, and the gray the 2020. You can see we started high with civil, and it went. Our graphs are moving in the wrong direction. When you look at construction specialization as well, the same can be said about that. The same can be said about woodworking as well, which means we are not increasing the number of learners who are offering these specializations, and it requires us to come with strategies that is going to reverse the graph as it is showing there. When you look at electrical technology, those 3 specializations, the enrollment in digital technologies is almost non-existent, with just about 400 learners across the country offering digital technologies. Electronics, the same can be said. With power systems, we started well, over 5,000, and now we are under 1,000 learners across the country who are offering the subject. The last set of specializations, mechanical, the numbers are better than civil and electrical, but still the numbers are not that high. Unless we increase the numbers, we are not going to meet the targets that have been set by the NDP. And this type of figures are demonstrating that we need to do more, we need to get more learners into these subjects, schools need to be resourced, teachers need to be trained, and we need to be working with universities to work on the pipeline of teachers who must enter, and also explore ways of bringing the artisans into the teaching practice. EGD, which is compulsory subject, all of you will know that when we started, we had over 32,000 learners who were offering EGD in 2018. But came 2019, when there was that little confusion about whether EGD is compulsory or is not compulsory, we saw the numbers dropping drastically. But after addressing that issue and clarifying it, and we want to thank you as our teachers who on the ground spoke to parents and to learners about the EGD being compulsory for all the specializations, we saw the numbers coming up again in terms of participation. Technical mathematics, we started low. The numbers in 2019 were not so good, but we also saw an improvement in 2020, over 10,000 learners offering technical mathematics. The graph is moving in the right direction, but it's important that we need to increase the number of learners offering technical mathematics. Now, when it comes to technical sciences, this is the best graph that we have of all of them. It is moving in the right direction because it is moving up from the left, right, up to the right. Though the numbers are not so much encouraging, but the shape of the graph looks good. I know I'm talking to mathematicians and scientists who can interpret graphs. When you look at them, you can make sense of what is happening there. Now, moving out of participation, enrollment, and coming to performance, let us see how these learners are doing in this subject. Civil services, it's moving up nicely in the right direction. When you look at construction, moving in the wrong direction, but not that much. But all of them, what is encouraging is that the performance is above the benchmark of 90%. We've got over 90% pass rate in these subjects, and all of them, including woodworking. But it would be important to get every child to pass where possible. And you can see woodworking as well. Last year, in 2019, it dropped a little bit, and then it went up by 0.7%. Not something that can be celebrated that much, but the shape of the graph itself is something that is encouraging. But in terms of raw numbers, it's something that we need to be working on. When you look at the performance in electrical technology, the specializations, Digital technology, I indicated that the numbers there, the participation rate is very low. We should be getting every learner passing there because the learners are around 400 across the country. But the improvement, starting from 92% to 96%, it's moving in the right direction. Electronics, just a slight drop of 0.3% last year from 2019. And power systems as well, a drop of less than 1%. But it's important that we need to push the pass rates up and get every child to pass. When you look at mechanical technology, what is concerning is the shape of the graph of woodworking and metalwork. That is going in the wrong direction, though in terms of raw numbers one would say the decline is negligible, but we do not want any type of decline. It's important that we need to work very hard to turn the graph in the opposite direction. Now, we saw that the participation in technical mathematics that we are talking about was moving in the right direction. However, when you look at the performance, it's inverted, that it is moving in the wrong direction. And what is concerning is the quantum of the drop. We started in 2018 when the learners first offered this subject at Matric. We had more than half of the learners passing the subject with 50% and above. But it dropped by about 8% in 2019 to 42%. In 2020, the drop was huge by about 10%. And when you look at 2018 to 2020, the drop is about 18%. This is disaster. This needs to be arrested. And unless we get the teaching of technical mathematics right, we are going to see further declines. We cannot allow it to go further down. We need to turn it around in 2021 when we do the analysis, when we review the results of technical mathematics. They must show us some difference. There are many arguments around this type of performance. Some indicating that the design of the curriculum itself was not meant to be at the same level as mathematics. But that is the case right now. And others are actually arguing that the difficulty level of technical mathematics is even much higher than that of core mathematics, something that needs to be looked at. And other people are also indicating that our specialists are telling us that technical mathematics is supposed to be having a practical assessment task, something that it does not have. We are working with Umalusi on ensuring that the PET is there for this subject. The circular has already gone out, and you may have already received it. And we are very confident that the PET will be administered this year in 2021. There are those who say administration of the PET is going to assist us to turn the performance of technical mathematics around. We are looking with keen interest in seeing the impact that the practical assessment task is going to have. We've got our technical team from DBE, our specialists, those who are working with Umalusi, and from examinations and curriculum who are working with Umalusi to finalize this PET. And as soon as it is finalized, we are looking at our specialists mediating it with you as our teachers in our schools. Colleagues, the success rate in technical sciences is also not moving in the right direction. But you can see that we started on a very good mark, over 86% pass rate in 2018. We have experienced a drop of 2% in 2019, but the drop went further by about 9% in 2020, something that is not good. It's moving in the wrong direction. And we're excited about this conference where we are meeting to come and analyze what are some of the key challenges and map out some of the strategies in terms of how do we turn the ship around to ensure that we don't drive learners away from this subject. EGD, we are happy. The performance is consistently above 90%. And in 2020, we improved to almost 94%, where we started with 93% in 2018. It's important that we must push this above the threshold of 95%. Colleagues, the implementation or some of the achievements that we have had since introducing the technical specializations, and particularly technical mathematics and technical sciences, is that the introduction of the PET for technical mathematics in grade 10 to 12 will be implemented, as I indicated, in 2021, and getting all our key partners to agree to this is a great achievement. We have developed and mediated ATPs for grade 10 to 12 for all the technical subjects, including technical sciences and technical mathematics. We have developed and mediated a bridge section 4 of the CAPS for grade 10 to 12 for all the technical subjects, including technical mathematics and technical sciences. We have established working teams responsible for development of common practical simulation assessment tasks for grade 12 for all specializations, and we have established the writing teams for the development of digital content for grade 10 to 12 for all the electrical technology, mechanical technology specializations, and introduced provincial coordinators on the DBE Moodle platform, and we are working together on that using technology to mediate the subjects themselves. A memorandum of agreement was also forged between Fort South Africa and DBE, where we rolled out 240 engines to about 240 schools so that we can promote the teaching of a mechanical technology, particularly specialization of automotive. And we are excited to be partnering with Sasol as well in ensuring that we improve the performance of technical mathematics and technical sciences, and we are happy about the commitment that was made earlier on by the CEO that says they are going to make over 2 million rands on an annual basis for the next 3 years to support us in developing the blueprint for training of our teachers, because our teachers are the differentiator. Without the teachers, we can't do anything. And it is important that you, as our teachers, attend these training workshops, and I'm excited that you have attended this conference, and like to thank Sasol Foundation for making it possible by providing you with data that enables you to be able to participate in this conference. Colleagues, some of the achievement, I will skip all that and come to this very important part. And it requires all of us. It's important that we need to change the mindset of the society, the mindset and attitude of learners, the mindset and attitude of parents towards technology subjects. Because unless we indicate that the currency of these subjects is the same as the subjects that we offer in our academic stream, we are still going to have a society that thinks that offering technical subject is something of a lower standard, and that there is no parity of esteem between our subjects, and somebody who is offering this subject is somebody who is going to occupy the lower echelons of the economy. You and I know that these subjects that are going to assist us to produce technicians and artisans are driving the economy in the townships, in our rural areas, in the cities, that the technicians are the ones that help us to repair whatever gets damaged, whether it is our car or it is our installing our DSTV dish, or it is about fixing our pipe that is broken, or it's about fixing my electricity. I don't call an engineer to come and do all those things. I call an artisan, I call a technician to come and do all those things. And guess what? They bill you the same way that your doctor would bill you. Their call-out fee is about 450 rands before they even touch anything. The same thing that the doctor does when you go and consult, that you pay them about 500 rands just for examination, without the prescription, without the parts that you must go and buy still for them to come and fix the problem. So in terms of the earnings, the artisans are earning as much as any other professional. And it's important that we need to change the mindset to say these are low-income jobs, because it is not correct. We need to change the mindset of our learners about the subjects, and we need to make them fun. And the only person who can make these subjects fun are our teachers. They are yourself. And unless you are properly equipped and capacitated, we will just be fighting a battle that we will be losing. I'm excited to be informed that over 600 teachers across the country showed interest in this conference, and they actually registered for the conference for self-development, so that when you go back to your classrooms, you become a better teacher, that you are going to share experience and best practice with your fellow colleagues, and that Sasol Foundation has actually called experts. We just received an exciting presentation from Germany, from industry, and that this is what you're talking about when we say we need to partner with industry to ensure that our teachers are sufficiently capacitated to be able to teach these subjects. It's important that technical mathematics and technical science be understood for the purpose which they were developed. They were developed to support the teaching of other technology specializations. And it's important that we must make technical mathematics and technical science exciting. Colleagues, there are challenges. There are challenges, and I will not spend much time on those challenges. Some of them are systemic, in that we know that some of the specialists who are actually supporting you as teachers, they are not trained in technical maths and technical science, or they are not qualified in technical maths and technical science, but they are qualified as mathematics teachers themselves. So we need, as a sector, to look at the issue of creating positions or posts for specialists for technical mathematics and technical science and other technology subjects. It's important that we need to work with universities to increase the pipeline of teachers who enter the teaching system, who have qualifications in technical subjects. Technical mathematics, technical sciences included as well. We know that you colleagues who are teaching the subjects, some of you raised your hands when we introduced them, and you said, I'm willing to be reskilled so that I may be able to teach this subject. So it's important that we need to build a strong pool of teachers, and we are excited about the commitment made by Sasol this morning, that they are going to assist us to achieve this. Colleagues, I would like to take this opportunity and thank you for attending, and wish you well for the 2 days that you'll be attending the conference, and we look forward to working with you to turn the graphs around to ensure that we are going to increase participation of learners, and we are going to get these children to pass. That is what we are asking of you, and we are excited to be partnering with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Dr Tlhabane. Thank you for your infectious energy. He's so enthusiastic. I think it comes through on the platform. And that's also what children and students need, is to see teachers invested in them. And that's definitely what I've observed in your presentation. And again, just a reminder that it's one thing to have a good trainer. It's another thing to have a teachable spirit. So congratulations to all of you who've opened yourselves up to learning. Now we're going to take some of your questions that have come through, as you now know how to pose your questions through the Q&A. However, before we start raising these questions, we want to just get a sense of your thoughts on some key questions. So we're going to run a poll to see how many of you feel a particular way about a particular theme. What you need to do is go to the polls tab. I know we're making you work a lot here. So get out of where you are, the plenary session, and go to the polls tab. There, 6 questions are going to come up. I'll read them to you. I'll give you some time to answer, and then we will gauge your sentiment. And then after that, we're going to Q&A, and Dr Tlhabane is going to help us answer some questions that come up. So let's begin with the first question in the polls tab. And the question is, or let me do this because I'm quite short-sighted. So let me get... Okay, so we will do the polls a little bit later, but it's really just to get a sense of your feelings about some of the subjects we're raising in this year's annual Technical Teachers Conference, and also the presentations that are coming through on really aligning vocational skills, I suppose, with industry. And we've just heard a review on the 2020 Matric results, what could be done better, because at the end of the day, it's also about your perspective. So we'll bring you those polls when they are ready. I think now it's time for us to get some questions coming through. So help me sound smart by posting your questions in the Q&A portal, and then we can raise them with Ndate Tlhabane. Ndate Tlhabane, I mean, I am not a teacher by any stretch of the imagination, and and I definitely am not mathematics proficient. Nonetheless, I do still want to understand where there are gaps, because you identified many gaps and a regression in the graphs. What are some of the causes? You said they are systemic, but can you just point us through what some of those challenges are?
Lerato, thank you very much. The introduction of any new curriculum would have a slow takeoff. And what we are seeing, though we don't like it, is not anything unnatural.
Right.
But it's important that we must be consistent and push.
Right.
And we will see the graphs turning around.
Yeah.
When the curriculum is developed, what the teachers eventually teach and what is being assessed
Right.
are usually three different things.
Right.
We have what you call the intended curriculum.
Okay.
We've got what we have, the taught curriculum, and we've got what we call the assessed curriculum.
Okay.
Now, it is like we are in the middle of the pandemic now. There's none of us who knows how to work within a pandemic.
Yeah.
There's no one who knows how to teach within a pandemic.
Yeah.
There's no one who knows how to moderate conversation within a pandemic.
Yeah.
And that we are all in the journey of learning. And why? Because this is something new.
Yeah.
And we need to adapt and adapt quickly.
Yeah.
So that is what happens when you introduce the new curriculum.
Yeah.
If it hits the ceiling too quickly, you get criticism as well.
Yeah.
The same way that when it is low, you get the criticism. If it hits the ceiling too quickly,
Right.
everybody questions about the quality and the
Yeah.
cognitive levels, that it is too easy, that you have actually introduced a subject that doesn't have much substance. So what we are seeing is not anything that is new,
Right.
though we don't like it. We need to change it and turn it around. The other thing is, as I indicated, is until you've got enough number of teachers
Right.
who are suitably qualified, who have gone through universities
Right.
and teacher training institutions and enter into the teaching space
Right.
with that, you'll continue to have some challenges as teachers that we are using to teach the subjects who are within the systems and we are reskilling,
Right.
are acquiring this knowledge, and they are very experienced teachers.
Yeah.
So they have the ability to adapt.
Right.
So the lack of teachers as well is one of the challenges. And we are confident that our teachers are going to adapt with
Right.
time. We give this thing about 3, 4, 5 years
Yes.
time.
Wow.
We should have stabilized.
And that's going to be the new normal. 3,
That
4,
that
5.
is going to be the new normal that we
Right.
have set. So continuous capacity training, conferences like this, teachers attending, we are going to see
Right.
the desired improvement.
And in the inverse, for those who got it right, because there were some trends where the trajectory was pointing upwards, what were the characteristics or the interventions that ensured that there was success?
We've got a very unequal society, and education is not spared from that. So our schools are not the same. There are schools that are well resourced. There are schools that are not well resourced. There are schools that can afford to send a teacher to conferences, and the schools will carry the cost of attending those conferences. There are schools that won't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So we've got a mixed bag that would contribute to that type of the unevenness
Discrepancy, yeah.
that you may see. But this must not be understood that schools that are not well resourced cannot produce good results. We know that there are genius teachers who can produce good results out of nothing.
Yeah.
We have seen distinctions coming out of deep rural areas
Yeah.
because of a teacher who loves what they're doing and who is a genius. So my statement must not be understood to mean the upward trend that you saw only came from well-resourced schools.
Right.
Even from quintile 1 schools, where there is nothing, a teacher with a heart for their work can be the differentiator.
And I think that's really important. Okay, we've got our poll system up and running. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can just go onto your polls tab. You can see it. There's the chat, there's the polls, there's Q&A. Go to the poll and let's see what you think about certain things. Has your school, that's the question, received the PAT for technical maths? I see some of you have already started answering that question. It seems as though 54%, 54.5%, so just more than half say yes, and 45% so say no. So the good news is that the majority say yes, but it's a simple majority. We still need 45% that are going to need it. Now it's evened out at 50-50. So we're still a while away. Half have it, half haven't. The second is, what is your view regarding the difficulty of technical maths compared to pure maths? Is tech maths harder than pure maths? Some of you have already started answering it. And 41% of you say yes. They think it's harder. 58% of you say no. So the majority, 61% of you. Okay, so increasingly more and more of you say no. Tech maths is not harder. Let's go to the third question. And then Dr. Tlhabane, just take note of what we are asking here. Do you think currently tech maths or maths teachers are adequately prepared to teach the subject? I don't know if none of you have answered. But so far, it seems as though 100% say no. Do you think currently that there are tech maths teachers adequately prepared? Okay, let's go to the fourth question because there are 6. And in Dr. Tlhabane, you'll be speaking to some of these results as you see them. So the fourth question is tech maths teaching plan in your school properly scheduled to support the teaching of technical subjects. So in the school, in terms of the schedule, what do we see? 66.6% say tech maths teaching plan in the school is properly scheduled to support the teaching of technical subjects, but that number is going down a little bit from that 66.6. Currently, it's 57.1. So just slightly more than half say, yeah, it's properly scheduled, but there's still a while to go. So that seems to be a general trend in these results. They're somewhere between the 65, 55, and 48% range. So nearly half the schools in the country, or teachers in the country, believe there are shortfalls. How confident are you to teach binary/complex maths? A is more than 50%. Are you more than 50% confident? Very few of you think so.
Less than 50%.
Less than 50%, sorry. Not so confident. The others say 50 to 69% confident. That's 12% of you. Okay. So those with less than 50% confidence, they're rising in number. Then we have 70 to 90% confident. That's 27% of you. 90 to 100, 15. So the numbers vary. I'd just say less than a fifth are in each category. So you need to just really adapt to that. 25% of you say not applicable is what my myopic, short-sighted eyes are telling me. Okay, and finally, the sixth question. How confident are you to teach equations and graphs of ellipses? Is that right? and semicircles. Okay, so less than 50%, say 11. That's 15% of you. With time, let's see as your results come through. Okay, let's see where there's the highest number, not applicable. Those who are 90 to 100% confident are 10%, and somewhere between the 50 to 65, less than 75% are not so sure. So what do you make of these results?
Yeah, I think it's a clear indication or a report back from our teachers that we need to build on the confidence levels of our teachers.
Yeah.
The question is, how confident are you to teach? How confident are you? And as you say, you still have teachers who say, I'm not confident.
Yeah.
So it's important that conferences like this are going to make a contribution towards building the confidence level of our teachers. It's important that we need to continue putting teacher development workshops in place to build the confidence level of our teachers. And perhaps I also forgot to mention, and I should have mentioned this right at the beginning, that I've got my colleagues here in the conference, Mr. Mjomeni, who's our Chief Education Specialist, in the conference, who has joined virtually, that I must not stop him from answering some of the questions, and that I take all of them.
Right.
But before he comes in and you invite him maybe to comment, it's exactly to indicate that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Our teachers need to be supported more. The scheduling of the subject, reflection on the difficulty levels of technical mathematics compared to core mathematics. All those are the issues that we need to address. So perhaps you could invite our technical mathematics specialist colleague who is in the meeting as well. There are other specialists who are in the meeting who are responsible for other civil technology, Ms. There's really treat and all that, but since we're working on technical mathematics, we've got our specialist here.
Is that Ndate Mlungiseleli?
Ndate Mlungiseleli Njomeni.
If you are on the call, Ndate, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and then hopefully you can come through and start fielding some of the questions as they come through. Again, we value your input, so please participate in the polls, continue to provide us with as much information as possible that we can utilize so that it informs the policies as they come through. Right now, though, I want to go to the Q&A section so that we start seeing what questions are coming through as we await other specialists to join the call, Ndate Mjomeni, for you to come through. We have a question here, but this one I think is related to some of the earlier questions that were posed directly for our speaker from Germany. So I think a lot of people were very, very intrigued by that. But let's see a question that's coming through now with regards to you, Ndate Tlhabane.
Yeah, if they scroll down. Yeah, maybe that.
Can you see it? That one?
You
just slightly up?
One that said Mr. Tlhabane. Oh.
I think they're all mangled. There are a lot of questions around affordability. There are a lot of questions around that PAV system that was raised by, let's stay on the Q&A tab, please, so that we can get to the question that is relevant for Ndate Tlhabane. We've seen the polls, so let us have a look now at what we are seeing slowly. If we can just go down slowly and see what it is that our educators would like to know regarding the presentation that's been provided around technical mathematics. Mr. Tlhabane, there we go. Mr. Tlhabane, is a university the correct place to train people who will teach technical subjects?
In South Africa, the responsibility of training teachers is placed with universities. That is our policy landscape. However, it is becoming increasingly important for the training institutions to work with industry.
Yeah.
Because that is where the real practical work comes in.
Right.
But it's important as well that universities build industry equivalents of facilities within their campuses so that the teachers would get the real work experience.
Yeah.
So it's about universities partnering with universities, building the workshops
Right.
and building the facilities that universities can be able to provide proper training. We cannot take the training away from universities.
Yeah.
But at the same time, universities may not be able to do it on their own,
Yeah.
particularly for this type of subjects,
Yeah.
where a lot of practical work is required. However, we still have challenges in the country, where when we look at our TVET colleges, where our N courses, we've got a lot of students who come out of technical colleges who have not yet received their qualification. Why? Because they have not yet received their practical part. And that is a role that industry must play to absorb this, to give them the workplace experience. So, and that is the reason why TVET colleges working with the QCTO are approving the use of simulators to replace the real work experience.
Right.
So it's important that we must understand that universities have a role to play, but universities need to revise their approaches to teacher training. So the answer to the question is teacher training is the competence of universities, but universities need to look at how they bring industry into the training, particularly for technology teachers.
I'm just very curious at what you're saying, and this is just for me journalistically. Here we see the Sasol Foundation, and I mean underscore Sasol, one of the biggest industrial players in South Africa, committing itself in so many ways. In terms of engagements that you've seen as the DBE with corporate South Africa, what level of participation through their CSI programs do you see where they say, we want to get involved, we want to open our workshops, our factories to teachers in this vocational sphere?
Resourcing of technical high schools, it's very heavy.
Yeah.
It's capital intensive. But we appreciate the contribution made by industry. Sasol making immense contribution.
Yeah.
I mentioned Ford earlier on, donation of engines, Nissan, donation of engines, BMW, we have them working with us. But we do agree that the resources that they have, they may be limited. The participation of other government departments like National Treasury, making funding available to drive the skills agenda of this country is very, very critical. And unless we crack that, we increase the allocations that are assisting us to expand the technical high schools in the country, we will not reach the NDP target at the time that we are supposed to meet them. But we have conditional grants that have been made available. We have at the moment the Med Science and Technology conditional grant. But we'll all agree that it is a drop in the ocean compared to the demands of these subjects. We had the recapitalization of technical high schools a few years ago where a special grant was made available. It assisted us to build workshops and to provide the necessary equipment into these schools. So the role of industry, we recognize it, but we'd like to ask them to do a little bit more. The advent of 4IR perhaps is going to be a game changer as well, in that the role of simulators would play an increasing role. Instead of putting an engine inside of a workshop, that you're going to come with the apps and the softwares and the machinery that are going to assist us to be able to do all those things. So we are embracing all these changes with great excitement.
Yeah, relevance, that's the key. You know, you gotta make sure you're teaching something that the consumer wants, so that the technician coming out of the school, the engineer coming out of school is can easily be absorbed into the economy. There is a question here from Dungile Maponyane, which says, as a curriculum advisor who is assisting teachers in the district, I have a problem with the way in which the schools advocate technical mathematics. In terms of most of the schools say learners who are not doing well in mathematics need to either be doing maths literacy or technical maths. What can be done to turn this around? So it's the perceptions now of what technical maths is.
I don't know whether Mr. Mjomeni is ready to respond to that.
No, our next speaker is actually going to be Ndade Moses Simelane. So if you can help with this one.
And it speaks to the last but one slide, Lerato, that I spoke to, of communication with the parents, communication with students, sending out the proper messaging. So I take the comment from my colleague, the subject advisor, who say his experience or her experience on the ground is that children who are taking technical mathematics are those learners that the school says they are not good in mathematics.
Yeah.
So we need children who are good in mathematics to offer technical mathematics. So it must not be left to learners who are struggling to understand mathematics. Because like I indicated, the difficulty level of this subject, there are some experts and teachers who are telling us it is actually comparable to mathematics. And it was never intended for that. But the message must not be understood to mean it was intended to be easier. That was not the intention. It was for a different purpose, to assist learners to be able to understand the technology subjects.
Right.
That a child who comes with technical mathematics must be able to do well in civil, mechanical, and electrical specializations.
Okay. Fantastic. There is a question here from Masikiti, which says the NDP mandate of producing 300,000, is it?
30,000.
30,000. Huh. Do I need some technical maths training? That the mandate of producing those 30,000 artisans is always phased with the question from learners, and that their brothers and sisters have completed their studies, but they're still not employed. So this is really one of those things about, you know, you can have a dream, but ultimately it's to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, and to have somewhere to go.
I indicated earlier on, a child who has offered this subject and has actually even articulated into TVET colleges and other institutions of higher learning. These learners don't need to look for a job when they complete. They can be self-employed. They can be able to use the acquired skills and knowledge for livelihood. So the unemployed graduates are those graduates who possess qualifications that are not needed by industry.
Yeah.
So for you to be in demand, then you need to offer subjects that when you complete, you'll be well sought after.
Yeah.
Or you'll at least be an entrepreneur, be able to run your own business, be able to use your hands to feed yourself and to feed your families. And I indicated earlier on, this is a multi-billion rand space. In townships, all those houses there are fixed by artisans and technicians, and these are the people that we need. Lerato, you don't need a mechanical engineer to fix your car. When you take it for service, it is serviced by artisans and technicians at the car dealer.
I think also something, you know, and this is just sidebar. Some of the things we need to do is also inspire our children with role models. So if you look at Steve Jobs, one of the greatest entrepreneurs and inventors of our lifetime. You know, he was studying information systems and mathematics at Harvard and then decided what's happening in the lecture room no longer appealed to him. So he dropped out in his final year and founded Apple. A similar sort of story with Bill Gates, and definitely a similar story with Richard Branson, who started Virgin Aviation. So I'm not saying that children should say, oh, look at our role models, they quit university. But we shouldn't be so hard on them, because the creativity that you need, the idea that engenders a mind-blowing invention is not necessarily something that's going to come out of a college, a school, or a university.
Lerato, we have integrated entrepreneurship into all our subjects, precisely to address the issue that, that you are raising, that we need innovators, we need entrepreneurs. And these subjects offer those children the opportunity to be able to do that. I'm still yearning to see the day when we will have a South African invented car. And that there's somebody in this country who is sitting somewhere in a classroom, as you say, who will not necessarily need to go to university, but they can, out of the God-given talent and the creative juices that are in their heads, they can actually invent something. I'm just making an example with a car. But there are so many things that can be invented. And the issue that you are raising, I cannot agree with you more, Lerato. We are trying to change the mindset of wanting to go to university, because our universities are not able to absorb every matriculant who goes out of our schools. Hence, you've got a lot of learners who are unable to enter universities. During the days when there were in-person applications, we would have disasters with stampedes, because everybody wants to get into a university. And we say, we've got TVET colleges, and they can offer you even a much better opportunity to the economy than you can do when you go through the university. The issue of pushing learners into taking mathematics, physics, and the academic subjects with the whole aim of going to university, some of them are unable to progress through the system because they are differently gifted. There are those children who are gifted with using their hands. I remember my late brother. He was amazing with using his hands. And if you push such a child into an academic stream where this child must memorize and must have the fluency, structured learning, and whatever, you frustrate this child, and you end up calling them a failure when they are actually differently gifted. If they are properly guided and properly supported, they will succeed somewhere. Listen, I may not be able to do the moderation jobs that you are doing so well, Lerato, as well as you are doing. Why? Because I'm differently gifted as a teacher, and that I'm not a journalist, and if I can be pushed into that space, I can be an absolute failure. You confessed earlier on. You confessed to say, I am not a teacher, and I don't think I would have succeeded if I would have been a teacher. So it is all about what you said earlier on, to say career guidance is very, very critical. And that teachers must be trained to identify children's potential and be able to assist them to move in the right streams for them to be able, every child can succeed if properly supported and properly guided.
The one thing you do have that I don't have, your maths brain, but better eyesight. So let's see what these questions are saying. Okay, Patti Caesar says, did you explore what underlies good performance in mathematics? Have you underlined that? And have you done anything to ensure that such factors do not impact on the performance in tech maths? So what is working well in the general teaching of mathematics? What can you draw from that and then apply it on this side, and that we can replicate it on the tech maths side?
I agree that learning as a phenomenon, regardless of which subject you are learning, can actually be such ability and skills and approaches can be transferred from one subject to the other.
Yeah.
To say, what is that you're doing right in mathematics, or that is not being done right in mathematics, that can actually be taken as lessons that can be applied in technical mathematics. I think one of the things that have come through from research that has been done and from our specialists is that teaching of mathematics in South Africa focuses more on getting procedural fluency right instead of conceptual understanding of the subject. That a child who's been trained to move, to say from this step, you move to this step, and that's how you move there. From this step, you move to this step, you move to this step until you arrive at the answer. That the emphasis has been much more on that. But if you ask the child, why are you doing this? A child may not even know why they are doing that. What we call conceptual understanding. That I'm able to explain why. To explain procedural fluency is around, a good example would be driving a car.
Yeah.
You know how to start, how to
ignition.
put your foot on the pedals,
Yeah.
how to indicate, how to overtake, how to do all those things.
Yeah.
But if I ask you, Lerato, can you explain to me
What's happening?
the mechanics behind what you are doing?
I don't know.
You don't know what is happening. You don't know what is happening in the engine. You don't know what is... But as a user of this machine called a car, you may not necessarily have to know.
Yeah.
All that you need to know is how to move this object from this place to that.
That one, yeah.
But for understanding, if you want to understand how this thing operates, you need what you call conceptual understanding.
Got you.
But we have perfected procedural fluency, procedure step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then a child gets a distinction if they can prove that they are able to do that.
Right.
So it is the same problem that would then get into the technical mathematics
Right.
as well, that we need to get conceptual understanding right for learners to be able to understand the subject, for them to do well.
And then back to your point earlier on, for the child to have that conceptual understanding, that engine needs to be in the room for them to see how it all comes together.
They must break it down into pieces.
Got you.
And able to see what is inside
Got
and
you.
be able to assemble it again.
And a final question, and this is a journalistic one from me. It's all good and well for you to say, you know, a great teacher will identify the child who's differently gifted. They will nurture those children to think conceptually and critically. But in the classrooms and the class sizes that we have, I think that's asking a lot of teachers. You are saying to them, teach the subject, teach it well. Now teach the subject, make it relevant to the 4IR. And then you're saying to them, be a sort of a psychologist and understand the child. And they've got 50, 60, 70, at times even more than 100 learners to work with. That's a lot.
Teaching is a noble profession. Amazing. You are expected to be everything. Teachers are psychologists, they are social workers. They solve so many problems that have nothing to do with their subject.
Yeah.
When they see a child who falls asleep in class, in the past during our time, a teacher would whip you for sleeping in class and you say, I'm boring. But teachers have been trained to identify the child who falls asleep in class,
And ask
get
why.
closer to the child, understand why. And they end up identifying that this is a child who is heading a family, who must after school go to one of the retail shops to go and do some casual work of packing the shelves. And the child only goes home at 3 o'clock in the morning after they have
Tired.
repacked the shelves, so that when I get into the retail shop in the morning, everything has been packed neatly. And the child in the morning must be at school on time.
Yeah.
So teachers are everything. And somehow teachers are able to do these things. How teachers do it, Nobody knows. It's a gift that comes from God. But a very observant teacher is going to be able to pick up these things. Some teachers even take the responsibility of paying university fees for some of these children. They give them food at school. They buy them clothes. How a teacher identifies the child, nobody knows. But teachers are somehow able to do all these things. They're magicians. And without teachers, there are a lot of children who would have fallen by the wayside. And there are great and amazing teachers. And that is why we say teachers are not sufficiently paid. They should be paid. They should be paid much more.
You're opening a can of worms, and those are the questions that are going to come through later on. Okay, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Tlhabane. So let me ask you a question. If there are 3 birds perched on a wall, and a farmer comes and shoots one, how many are left?
If there are 3 birds
perched on a wall.
Perched.
Yeah, just sitting on a wall.
Yeah.
And a farmer comes and says, I don't want birds on my wall, and shoots one. How many birds are left?
There are 3 birds. 2 alive, 1 dead.
You see? No. They all fly away because the minute the farmer shoots the gun, they're all flying away. There are none left. That's conceptual learning.
Okay. Now, let me come in and use my teaching skills. You say your question should have been if there are 3 birds perched on the wall, the farmer comes, they shoot. How many are left on the wall? You said how many are left? Do you see now? That's where teaching comes in.
Thank you.
And say then you structure the question in such a way that it is of the right cognitive level, and the information that you provide for the learner is enough for them to be able to interpret the question. So I still say there are 3 birds left, 2 alive, 1 dead, because none has vanished.
You've given a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much to you, Dr Seliki Tlhabane. Thank you for everything. It's been wonderful.
Thank you
very
You've
engaging.
been wonderful, Lerato. You are an amazing moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Ndate. And if nothing else, here was one of the chief directors in the Department of Basic Education saying he sees you, he appreciates you, they support you, they want to encourage you. It's all in for them. And so thank you very much for those insights. And thank you to the audience for your questions, your engagement, and your commentary, and also for participating in the polls. Well, I'm looking forward to my partner in crime having something to say.
It was the most stimulating and interesting discussion. It is okay with you. I have our next speaker waiting to come on stage and share with us his insights into different operating models and occupational schools progress. Dr. Moses Simelane is Chief Director of Curriculum, and he is with us in studio today to share a presentation on 3-stream operating models and the progress of occupational schools, as I mentioned. So please welcome Dr. Simelane onto stage.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and a very good afternoon to all the delegates to the conference. And let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers for inviting basic education to make this presentation, to update our colleagues, the teachers, and also even our stakeholders in basic education on the progress that we've made to date on the implementation of the 3-stream model. Let me just double check. How much time do I have, by the way, for this presentation so that I can pace myself properly? Sorry? Oh no, that's good enough. And another special request, George, if I'm speaking to George, I have just in the past 2 minutes or so, I've resent the presentation. I don't know whether you've seen the email from me. I've actually added one slide, which I think is critically important in the update. Okay, all right. Next slide, please. Well, this is the outline of the presentation, which I'm not going to go through. Next slide. You know, the purpose of the presentation is to present to conference an update on the progress that we've made to date on the implementation of the three-stream model. Actually, it actually goes beyond just presenting the progress, but also looking at maybe what kind of guidance and support could come from conference for DBE to take this process forward. Next slide, please. Well, maybe just a quick recap on why are we implementing the three-stream model. This is not an exhaustive list of objectives, but I've just pulled a few of them. The first one is to promote the acquisition of knowledge, skills, competencies, and dispositions for a changing world. We know that there is so much talk about the 21st century skills and the skills and competencies for the changing world. So this is what the three-stream model is also contributing towards. Secondly, to implement learning pathways which meet the diverse learning needs of our youth. In this case, we have come to realize that offering a purely academic curriculum is not helping. So a number of is not helping a number of learners in this sector, and therefore we had to diversify our curriculum and offerings to make sure that we meet those diverse learning needs of our young people. Thirdly, to contribute to societal and economic objectives as outlined in the National Development Plan. Next slide, please. Now, starting with the progress on the General Education Certificate policy. Colleagues may be aware that in the past 2 to 3 years, we have embarked on a process of reviewing the General Education Certificate policy framework because it was published, I think, around 2009 for implementation, but the Department of Education then could not implement this qualification. So therefore it has been outdated, and therefore we had to review it and align it to our curriculum, current curriculum offerings. So the progress that we have made in the past 2 years is that we've gotten to a point where Umalusi has provisionally approved this qualification policy framework in March this year. And then Umalusi also provided a few recommendations to basic education so that we can conclude all the other policy process steps, so that when we resubmit it back to Umalusi, then we would have covered all the ground that we needed to cover. Part of what we still needed to do after it had been provisionally approved was that we needed to have it legally vetted by our legal services. And that process has already been achieved. And we have also effected those amendments from a legal perspective to make sure that it is legally balanced and legally sound. Minister has also approved the gazetting of this draft policy for public comment, and we have already started seeing, members of the public and organizations engaging on the policy framework and giving us their inputs. Now, once we've integrated the public comments, what we are going to do next will be to submit this policy framework to the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation and subject it to the social and economic impact assessment system. And this is the instruction from government that any policy that is being developed has got to pass the test of the SAYAS process. And then in that case, after that process, then the policy will be ready for us to resubmit back to Umalusi, so that then Umalusi will take it forward with SAQA for registration on the NQF. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of curriculum development, what progress have we made? We all are aware, and I've joined the conference when there was discussion around subjects like technical mathematics and I think other technology subjects, which I may have missed. We know that those subjects are in the main part of the vocational stream. Maybe just to talk about the three-stream model and just to assist colleagues to recap. Our three-stream model has got these three streams, and that is the latest reconfiguration of the three-stream model. Firstly, it's the academic stream. The academic stream prepares learners for studies in academic qualifications. We can mention examples. I think that's well known. And then the second stream is actually the vocational stream. I think the last time when we presented at this conference, we were still talking about the technical vocational. With a lot of work in the conceptualization of the three-stream model, we have dropped the first name technical. So we only talk about the vocational stream, which prepares learners for different vocations and professions. Whether you talk about visual arts, we talk about engineering, the list goes on. That's going to be the thrust of the vocational stream. And then we also have got the occupational stream. We no longer talk about the technical occupational. Like I've indicated, with the vocational stream, we've dropped the first name technical. So we only talk about the occupational stream. The occupational stream in the main prepares learners for the workplace, so that we could begin to see some of our learners after completing grade 12, maybe articulating to the world of work where they could probably get opportunities of participating in learnerships, in artisanships and all of that, so that then they can become qualified artisans, etc. So these are the three streams, and what is notable is that we have developed an articulation framework so that it's easy for us to guide learners, and we can give learners a sense of which career pathway can they learn themselves by entering a particular stream, so that we make sure that we strengthened the articulation to TVET colleges and to other post-school education and training institutions. But also, what has been built into developing the program, the three-stream model, and the three streams, is that if learners should decide to switch from one stream to the other, those possibilities have been catered for. And that is what is called, it's the kind of articulation that we refer to as portability. All right, coming back to what we are seeing, progress on curriculum development. There's been a lot of curriculum development at the GET level for grades 8 and 9 in particular, and for years 1 up to 4 in our schools of skill. We have already, late last year, we submitted 13 vocationally oriented subjects for grades 8 and 9 to be implemented in ordinary schools. We submitted them to Umalusi for appraisal and for feedback to basic education so that we can finalize their development, so that they can be approved to policy. We also did the same with the 26 occupational subjects, which were piloted since 2017 in schools of skill, and this year they are being implemented fully. Whilst we submitted the 13 vocationally oriented subjects to Umalus, we also published the same subjects for public comment at the end of 2020, and we have received a number of submissions in terms of how we can strengthen the subjects for approval and for further rollout. I must already indicate that Umalusi has started giving DBE feedback on the design and the quality of the subjects. In fact, the first session that we've already had in this regard is Umalusi gave us feedback on the civil technology subjects, both for schools of skill and for ordinary schools. Next slide, please. And then in terms of LTSM, we had a session in February this year, where we developed LTSM for occupational and vocational oriented subjects. What we achieved was that grades 8 and 9 LTSM for vocational oriented subjects were completed, and the process of quality assuring them actually started. The other achievement was that a total of 9 Term 1 LTSM for grades 8 and 9 were uploaded on the DBE website for access by educators. Remember, I've just mentioned that the 13 vocationally oriented subjects, I don't know whether I've mentioned that, but those are actually piloted in grade 9 in ordinary schools this year. So we also had another workshop on LTSM development, which was planned for May. And then we've got a final one that is actually coming next month in July. Next slide, please. Now, with regard to implementation and pilot, I've indicated that the 22 occupational subjects, because the other 4 are actually fundamental subjects, were piloted since 2017 to 2020 in schools of skill. And then this year, we've started with the full implementation in those schools of skill of this program. And then coming to ordinary schools, we requested provinces to select 10 schools each that would actually participate in the pilot of the 13 vocationally oriented subjects. In total, we ended up receiving about 105 schools because Gauteng and Western Cape actually went over the 10 schools that we had selected, which is a good indication. It tells a lot about the state of readiness in these 2 provinces, that they are even prepared to go over the specified number. As I've indicated earlier on, the pilot started in grade 8. It is moving to grade 9 in 2022. Next slide, please. Another critical development has been the one of developing a 3-stream model master plan. The master plan is actually the implementation plan. We had to structure it and make sure that we inform the sector in terms of how the implementation is going to unfold, and what are some of the critical key priority areas that are built, or what are the pillars of the master plan. The master plan has got 10 pillars or 10 key priority areas. The first one was to finalize the conceptualization of the 3-stream model. As I've indicated, maybe I need to mention that we managed to achieve that in September and October last year, where with the assistance of a technical working group on articulation, which actually came with the articulation framework and made sure that it was embedded in the implementation of the 3-stream model. And that is a very key achievement with regard to the program. The second one is technical advisory support. In this case, we are talking about, we are proposing that there are many areas of technicalities and different expertise that will be required to implement the 3-stream model. And as such, we view the 3-stream model as bigger than basic education. And that is why we are actually going to sort of identify different expertise and constitute that into an technical advisory support structure to work with the DBE in piloting. We could, in that support structure, we could be having, for instance, researchers who can research on issues of articulation, who can research on issues of ensuring that our learners can articulate in the world of work, that they can actually be exposed to work-related learning experiences. These are just examples of technicalities that we can't do by ourselves as DBE. I've mentioned the fact that we are finalizing the vocational curriculum for grades 8 and 9 for implementation in ordinary schools. And then our next pillar is going to be a curriculum development at FET level, in particular, looking at coming up with the occupational subjects for FET, and that process needs to start, in fact, needed to start this month in June, and we estimate that around June of 2023, we should be having the curriculum ready at FET level, so that then we can allow learners who have completed grade 9, who wants to continue within the schooling system, to articulate to the occupational stream, as it were. General education certificate, I've already talked about, and the dashboard and plan. The dashboard and plan, I think it talks to issues such as how will the assessment be carried out? What kind of systems are we going to be putting in place? Are we going to see another exam as big as the National Senior Certificate Examination, for instance? So there is a lot that has already been explored in this regard. All I can say is that there are strong views that there will be 5 subjects that will be examined at the end of the grade 9 year. Those will be examined externally. DBE will take responsibility thereof. And that we are also planning to come up with an online marking system. right? Teacher training and development. So as we develop our curricula, we also have to make sure that our teachers are brought on board and they are thoroughly prepared to be able to deliver these new areas of specializations. For instance, what we've seen in 2015 was that with the partnership that we have with different industry and business, we were able to access the technical training centers of business and industry so that we train our teachers and subject advisors, even on practical skills that are contained in these subjects, so that the teaching is not just theoretical, but it is also hands-on. Advocacy, change management, and communication. We are also working with our Communications Chief Directorate at DBE to come up with a communication strategy and an advocacy program. There's a lot of advocacy that we need here to change mindsets, especially in the community. Building partnerships, Mr. Tlhabane has HR and funding. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. In terms of HR, we have already engaged Deans of Education, the Deans of Education Forum, where we presented these areas of specialization so that higher education institutions can include these specializations in initial teacher education. That is the HR part. In terms of funding, we still don't have funding from government for the 3-stream to roll it out. Yet, this is a program that is resource intensive, as Ms. Tlhabane indicated, and therefore we need to mobilize more funding, including funding from National Treasury. Finally, it's piloting. We do our pilot as we move ahead before introducing. Next slide. I'm about to finish. Next slide, please. Okay, maybe the previous slide. I think I may have missed something. Okay. Now, here are some of the recommendations that came from the HEADCOM workshop that was held in April this year. So HEADCOM actually made the following recommendations. Firstly, HEADCOM implored DBE to ensure that the completion of the General Education Certificate is realized prior to its implementation. Lessons learned from the Schools of Skill pilot needed to be utilized to enhance the implementation. Next slide, please. Next slide. I think it's still on recommendations. Thank you. The sector should ensure that qualifications were ready on time. The type of teachers required and the role of business in the development of the curriculum needed to be highlighted. I think this is very key. It's a very key recommendation wherein we need to learn maybe from TVET colleges or from the TVET college sector in terms of how business was roped in, even in strengthening the curriculum so that it leads to qualifications that are sought after by industry. That's very important. And also the point that Mr. Tlhabane talked about, and that is the work-based learning experience, creating opportunities for our learners to actually have that kind of work-related experience before they get to be employed on industry. The National Treasury needed to be kept abreast of the progress that we are making, so that we can make sure that maybe in some way we could be able to solicit funding for the implementation of the 3-stream model. Next slide, please. This slide actually lists a few challenges The financial constraints or budgetary constraints, I won't talk much in detail. I've already made reference to that. That we currently don't have funding from the vote. Teacher supply for specialized subjects, I talked about that. It's in the plan already. Delay in the completion of the LTSM actually saw a very slow start in the pilot in grade 8 this year. Upskilling of subject advisors at provincial and district level. This is very important. To this end, we've actually issued a circular S6 of 2021, looking at how we could utilize existing subject advisors, because we still don't have subject advisors who have specialized in these emerging subjects. Next slide, please. Okay, that takes us to the end of the presentation. So our recommendation to conference is for conference to note the progress in the implementation of the three-stream model, to provide further inputs and support, particularly from the side of industry and TVET colleges, in terms of how we can work as a system to make sure that the implementation takes off to good effect. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Dr. Moses Simelane, for coming through, Chief Director of Curriculum in the Department of Basic Education, just speaking us through the approaches going forward by way of the three streams model, the outcomes of the research, the piloting that's being done, and quite frank on the recommendations as well. If we can just ask and beg for your indulgence, Dr. Simelane, we've got just a few questions coming through from our delegates who just want to engage you. Philemon says, the pilot of vocational-oriented curriculum in grade 8 this 2021 and grade 9 in 2022, when are we going to implement vocational-oriented curriculum in all the technical schools, is what Philemon would like to know.
Okay, thank you very much. I've learned that I'm speaking to Lerato.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the thank you very much for the question. Our view is that I mean, we've set aside the 2 years, that is 2021 and 2022, for the pilot at GET level. But the vocational stream has been in implementation since 2016, actually. But we needed to build some form of background before learners can articulate to the stream, because the streaming actually begins from grade 10. But already we do have the vocational stream in implementation. And what we are doing with the pilot, maybe in closing, is just to make sure that we can prepare our learners who actually might want to deviate and articulate to TVET colleges, so that we don't force all our learners to stay within the schooling system. So why we are introducing the vocationally oriented subjects at the GET level before grade 9 is just to make sure that we open up the articulation even to TVET colleges. Thank you.
All right, stay with us, Dr. Simelane. There's a question here from Gilbert, and he says, what are the current NQF levels of the certifications offered at schools of skills? What are the current NQF level of the certifications offered at the schools of skills? Are learners exiting these schools of skills able to access a learnership at a TVET college where grade 9 is one of the qualifying criteria?
My understanding is that I think, knowing the schools of skills sector, there are schools of skill, in my view, that of these skills programs, or occupational-oriented programs, up to grade 12, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not all schools of skill that go up to grade 9, as an example. So in other words, if we talk about the NQF level, the one in particular that we are doing so much work on and preparing to implement, it's the GEC, which is at NQF level 1. That is at the end of the general education and training band or phase. There must be this measure where we can assess the achievement of learners for the first 10 years of schooling.
Right.
Thank you.
Dr. Simelane Linky would like to know, she says, so anecdotally, what she's seen, I have seen TVET colleges make a learner who comes from a technical school with a good pass in technical subjects start their learning at NTC 1 while following the stream that he or she did at grade 12. How can this be resolved? Linky wants to know.
This is it's a difficult question, but I think what it manifests, maybe for starters, this is a very serious challenge. This is a manifestation of inefficiencies within the education system, for starters. The fact that we would have learners taking an academic stream all the way to grade 12 and maybe not pass grade 12 and then go to TVET colleges and start start in qualifications at NQF level 2, for instance. This is wastage. We're wasting young people's time. We make them repeat qualifications levels that they have already gone past. So in terms of trying to remedy this, there are two proposals at the table between ourselves and the Department of Higher Education and Training. One of the key proposals is that we are already engaging on a possibility of streamlining the qualifications from NQF level 2 to 4, which are also offered by TVET colleges, so that if things go well, maybe in the next 5 or so years, we could see those qualifications being offered in the basic education sector. And that is the proposal which looks at streamlining the qualification offerings between ourselves as basic education and the TVET college system.
They're not letting up, Dr. Simelane. The questions are coming through. Philemon asks, the pilot of vocational-oriented curriculum in grade 8 in 2021 and grade 9 in 2022, when are we going to implement vocational-oriented curriculum in all the technical schools?
Okay. I think I didn't answer the first question because it's the same question, like question 1. Actually, that came through. I want to believe that from 2023, that is after the pilot in grade 9 in 2022, we should be ready as a sector to roll out the vocational-oriented curriculum in all schools. So the 2 years are actually part of preparing the system so that we don't shock the system by rolling out a curriculum that is still under development and has not been finalized to policy. But I can put my neck on the block and say we are looking forward to 2023, where we could have a full rollout of the vocationally oriented subjects at GET, though, in all technical high schools.
Right.
Because, I mean, those schools already have workshops and all the other equipment and facilities and resources that are required to implement the vocational curriculum. So it won't be a matter of having to resource these schools first. They are already, in fact, they are almost in a state of readiness. So I think 2023 could be a good year to start in all technical high schools. Thank you.
Okay, so basically in the next 18 months. And Mariki wants to know, Dr. Simelane, please explain the difference between the General Education Certificate and the General Occupational Certificate that Dr. Simelane has referred to both in his presentation.
All right. Maybe both of them, maybe the similarity is that both of them are NQF level 1 qualifications. But the GOC is actually quality assured and are implemented by sectors that are working with the quality councils for trades and occupation. To me, the GOC is more specific. It's a qualification that learners acquire after they have been exposed to an occupational program. So it is that specific. But with regard to the GEC, as the name suggests, is a general education certificate. In other words, it's going to be offered to all learners who have completed grade 9, whether they were taking strictly academic subjects or whether they were taking occupational subjects at the moment or vocationally oriented subjects up to the end of the grade 9 year. All of them will start by giving them a general education certificate. But I think it is in the plan of DBE going forward that in the next few years we'll begin to specialize in terms of the qualifications that we offer. Let me take an example of grade 12 as an example. Learners who would have been in the academic stream up to grade 12 might receive an NSC certificate, which will be NSC in brackets academic. I'm just making an example. Those pursuing the vocational stream might get a certificate called NSC vocational, and then those in the occupational stream might acquire an NSC occupational. So, but in the current debate, I think there is nothing stopping us as DBE engaging the QCTO, especially with regard to the curriculum offerings in schools of skill, because they are strictly offering the occupational program. And therefore, maybe we could look at, as the quality assurer, the QCTO could be engaged in terms of offering the GOC to schools of skill. I think it's an open engagement that we need to embark on.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Moses Simelane from the Department of Basic Education, speaking to us about the 3-stream model and occupational schools progress. And I wish you the best of luck in lobbying, as it were, and convincing the Treasury to unlock the money that's needed for the implementation of this new model and its capacity building. It's so very, very important to do so. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much, and thanks for the time that the conference has offered us. Thank you so much appreciated. All the best going forward.
Absolutely, and thank you for your insights. We appreciate it. Okay, we have one more session before we go to a break. There's been a lot for you to process, but it's all insightful, it's all meaningful and useful. So after the break, we'll be moving on to our training sessions, won't we, Sam?
Hello, Lerato. I was taken in by Dr. Simelane's presentation and enjoyed the engagement from the audience. Our next segment has the following title: Projects NQ4.0 Plus, Role of Trainer from Knowledge Transfer to Competence Acquisition. And joining us on screen are two presenters, Ms Isabella Hlabangu from the Southern African German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Mr. Martin Winkler, BBW Group, Bavaria. I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say about the role of the Southern African German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the development of technical skills in the country. They have a dual vocational training model that has grown out of a 37-year history of the South Africa German Chamber in local education with much success. I would like to encourage you all to pose your questions and make your comments in the chat window so that we can address them for our speakers. Welcome, Ms Hlabangu and Mr. Winkler. We look forward to hearing from you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for welcoming us and the opportunity to present. I'd like to start by giving a brief overview of the history of the chamber and what the Southern African German Chamber of Commerce and Industry is. We are basically a bilateral chamber, business chamber that's responsible for bilateral business relationships between Germany and South Africa. And by that, I mean supporting German businesses or companies that do business in South Africa, as well as businesses in South Africa or companies that do business in Germany and vice versa. And based on that history, we are partly funded by the German government, and our responsibility and our mandate is to support business relationships. And in order to support this business relationship, next slide please, brought us to the history of the chamber in dual vocational training. We are not trying to be an educational institution. Our role is not to be an educational institution. However, based on the structure of dual vocational training, to use our expertise in dual vocational training to see how we can help support German-based companies, South African-based companies, as well as our youth here in South Africa using the dual system. Next slide, please. The German Chamber of Commerce and Industry has a long history of dual vocational training in South Africa, where we practically started in 1985 with what we call now the CATS program. It's actually a business administration program. What is a dual vocational education system? A dual system is a program whereby young people, when they finish Matric, they get the opportunity to enter into our dual program where the chamber is responsible for, I guess you can say, the recruitment, the interviewing, and then we place these young people at companies. And at the companies, they spend 4 days of their week at a company learning by doing under the support of a mentor, and the 1 day week they do their theoretical learning at a chosen institution. And the duration of the dual system or any dual program is largely based on the occupation of the program. And the reason I say that is based on the history of our foundation being the CATS program. The German Chamber has developed in the dual system in South Africa. In 1991, we were working with Builders Training Center Soweto, where we were doing the dual system for the construction industry, bricklayers, basic plumbing. And because of that, we ended up in 2008 creating Southern African German Training Services in order to be the strategic marketing partner for our dual training programs. However, we saw that was not sustainable. We needed to get industry involved, to get social partners involved, to align also to the South African system. And that's when in 2017, we created the Education and Training Advisory Committee in order to bring together the industry, the educational institutions, the social partners. And luckily, that's where for the first time we actually met with the Sasol Foundation, and they became part also of our Education and Training Advisory Committee. Now, through this Training and Advisory Committee, and by virtue of the mere fact that you've got industry involved, it led to our implementation of the Mechatronics Dual Vocational Training Program in 2019, which is more linked towards digitalization, digital skills. It's a combination of mechanical, electrical, automation, electronics, technician training. And this we have aligned not only to the German qualification at the end, but to the South African Registered Occupational Trade in Mechatronics Technician. And then, of course, with our experience, we were able to then, based also on industry requirements and industry demand, we implemented our first forwarding and logistics program in the beginning of COVID. And I think we'll share a little bit more about that later on. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned, the committee that we've created is basically bringing all institutions together as well as the industry in order to collaborate, bring in their expertise to look after all the dual programs, look after them in what sense? To ensure that what the young people are learning in that classroom, that once a week, is directly linked to what the industry is doing, is directly linked to all the changes that happen within the industry. And hence we've got different experts within the different industries that look after the CATS program, the mechatronics program, as well as the logistics dual vocational training programs. Next slide, please. And these are currently the three programs that the Chamber is responsible for. The Business Administration program, which is a 2-year program, the Mechatronics program, 3.5-year program, the Logistics and Freight Forwarding program, a 3-year program as well. And we've aligned it to the CETA, the relevant CETA structured for each program, meaning that all the young people that go through our program are actually able to not only get the German certificate, but the South African recognized certification. And with that in mind, and based on our experience with the mechatronics program, it made sense to see how do we create a program that is long-term sustainable, considering that the Chamber is not a training institution, they're not an educational institution, and neither is the Chamber trying to be an educational institution. And that is why, please move into the next slide. In 2019, we partnered with the BBW, that's an Institute for Vocational Training and Qualification in Germany, who have experience in implementing and training of TVET lecturers in terms of mechatronics, to implement a program whereby we support trainers in vocational education in South Africa. And we started, obviously, by virtue of the mechatronics program taking place in the Gauteng region. We started in the Gauteng region, where in 2019, all exciting, we did a delegation trip to Germany to showcase digitalization in vocational education with 3 TVET colleges, the MESITA, as well as the QC2O at the time, just to show what digitalization looks like in dual vocational training. And with that planned, the idea was that with the 3 TVET colleges, we're going to start the 17 mechatronics lecture development training. Not to say that these lecturers are not developed already, they already are, but to see how do we align them based on the current skills and the upcoming skills, and also based on the new occupational trade for mechatronics training in South Africa. And the plan was that come 2020, we'll start typically with your normal planned theoretical training with these lecturers, where we bring lecturers from Germany to come and train in South Africa. We take the lecturers to Germany to get trained in Germany. They do their practical training at the Automotive Industry Development Corporation in Pretoria, and then they get their practical exposure at the companies that we work with, so that the lecturers can actually get to see what mechatronics look like and the different uses of mechatronic skills in South Africa. However, next slide, please. March 2020, we were hit by COVID-19. So automatically, all the plans that we had put in place, we had to look back and see, what do we do? What changes can we do? Because we could not get the lecturers from Germany to come and train here. We could not take the lecturers here to go to Germany to be trained. We could not necessarily do all the practical training at the AIDC. We could not even expose these lecturers to the companies as planned. So we had to quickly adapt to a blended learning system, to blended learning ways. And that is where my colleague Martin Winkler comes in. Martin has a lot of experience as well as passion for consulting, conception, and implementation in the e-learning and blended learning system. So he is a professional project manager for all international e-learning agencies, knows the designs and organization of blended learning modules. And because he's part of the BBW, he's the one that came up with the conceptualization of how we can actually train these TVET lecturers at our colleges using blended learning methods. But not only that, what Martin is going to present to you is also the lessons that we've learned since we trained these TVET lecturers using blended learning methods. Martin, I'm handing over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabella, for the wonderful introduction. I'm very pleased to be invited to this very interesting conference, and I would also like to welcome the audience again to our lecture. If you please jump to the next slide, and then to the next, and then to the next, because this is what you already heard about me. Isabella introduced me very well, so we jump to the agenda straight ahead. What I wanted to do in the next 30 minutes is I would like to establish a common understanding of blended learning based on two projects that we are currently running alongside the project that Isabella has already presented to you. And from that point, then finally, I would like to share with you the consequences of our experiences, our lessons learned with the introduction of blended learning in vocational trainings during the last years. So if you jump, please, to the next slide. The first project, one of the two projects we're currently working on, is the Network NQ4.0. It's a nationwide, in Germany, nationwide project dealing with giving support to lecturers and trainers in the field of vocational education, referring to the digital change. So, like Isabella already mentioned in the South African project we did together, also here we had to adopt the trainings due to COVID-19. Therefore, we had to implement the face-to-face trainings in virtual classrooms and self-learning phases. In other words, a special form of blended learning. But this we will see later on the next page. The second project, the next slide. We can see the second project we are currently working on, that's managing digital teaching and learning. We did that, or we are working on that on behalf of the GIZ, the Society for International Cooperation, and in these programs, in these projects, we are designing, organizing, and implementing trainings for the target groups, lecturers on the one hand, but also administrators and management, and we enable them to implement blended learning in their organizations in a sustainable way. At the moment, we are piloting the first modules here with a learning group from Jordan. And in the next step, these trainings are to be offered worldwide. On the next slide, then, I have a little transition slide then to the concept of blended learning, because here you see again the three most important points why blended learning is so important these days. I mean, it's nothing new, blended learning. We talk about it and we implement it in the last 10, 15 years already. But the point C, I take this first. As you all notice, all around the world, we had this big problem with COVID-19, and this pushed a way of learning that is independent from time and place. So this is one point, very important for the use of e-learning and blended learning. But also the fast developing technology, of course, the new possibilities for working on one hand, but learning or rather teaching on the other hand, is a very important point for we need more blended learning concepts. And then the second point, there's a need, there's a demand for flexible, creative, and problem-solving employees from the companies. So, but still, if you don't learn it in the way you learn, then you cannot do it afterwards in the companies as an employee. So there we have to start to change from instruction focused learning to coaching, more coaching, and project oriented, action oriented, and competence oriented kind of learning process, and not only knowledge based. So this is a point where the corporate culture of a company has to fit with the learning culture. This must match. So e-learning, as the part of learning supported with computers in general, in the form of blended learning as a special way of e-learning, combines the both worlds, the analog world and the digital world, and it creates a very good compromise between the new possibilities of digital technology on the one hand, and on the other hand, still focusing on the humans. Because it makes no sense only think about we have new technology and we all need it and we have to change everything. You still have to focus on the humans we have and the learners where with them we want to reach learning objectives, and we wanna develop competences of the learners. So on the next slide, this is why I prepared, at first the classic sentence, what is blended learning? At first, the didactically sensible alternation of different forms of learning. And on the next page now, on the next slide, I prepared a little graphic that I want to develop slowly with you, that we get this common sense of what is blended learning and what I'm talking about. At first, you have different forms of learning in a blended learning scenario. The first one is the classroom training, the classic. We all know the traditional way of learning face-to-face in a classroom, in attendance. The second form of learning is e-learning, and now I talk about the self-directed learning in this phase, where usually you put your learning medias on a learning management system, on a learning platform, and there you can have different medias there, web-based trainings, for example, micro trainings, learning videos, tests, but also normal documents. No, many people think that documents are not the state of the art. You're right. Often web-based training and interactive learning program or videos are more up to date. But if you think about it from a didactical way of a point of view, then the most important thing is always thinking about the way you link it with other learning forms, with other forms of learning, and then if you have questions, good questions alongside documents in the self-paced and self-directed learning phases of the learners, then this could be also very perfect to reach objectives, learning objectives. No? Because a lot of times I saw wonderful, shiny web-based trainings, perfectly done, everything's fine, but you can find it as a learner on a web-based training platform, on a learning management system, and nobody has a link and has assistance during learning. So this is why the collaborative tools I mentioned there in the self-directed learning phase, this is very important to get the connection to your learning group and to the trainers, where you can get answers and you get assistance and a real good coaching in your self-directed learning phase. The last form of learning is the webinar through virtual classroom, for example. And this is another synchronous communication possibility. to speak in live with your class, with your learners. You cannot exchange the classroom training exactly one-to-one with a webinar, because it's too long. Then you have to think about 1.5 hours, latest perhaps, or longest perhaps 3 hours. You can run a webinar. Depends a little bit on the experience of the trainers and the learners, how much they are used to that kind of learning. If you're very used to that kind of training, then you could do that longer, and you can arrange it very interactive with your learners and lively and not too too boring. This is the way you have to do a webinar. So now the alternation of these forms of learning within a blended learning scenario does not take place randomly, but depends on different influencing factors. This you can see now from the right side. I would now like to show you the different influencing factors. The first is the target group. The target group is always the point you have to start and think about. You need, for example, if you have learners, I just told you, that are used to blended learning, then you can quickly switch into the combination, the alternation of webinars and self-learning phases. If the learners are not used to, then you need perhaps the classroom training to get a good start, and lose the worries and fears of your learners in an blended learning scenario. The learning objectives and the learning content is very important influencing factor on your blended learning arrangement. For example, simple cognitive learning objectives, for example, introductions or overview on a topic, you can very easily put into a self-directed learning phase, and then get the link to a synchronous communication in a webinar or in a classroom teaching, and then do the transfer or the project-oriented learning process. The more complex things where you cannot leave the learner alone, for example. But there are also learning objectives you cannot start with a self-directed learning phase. You have to start with a synchronous communication. For example, if it's more complex, or if it's for example, affirmative objective learning objectives, or if it's just if you want to learn or teach from that point of view, handling a machine, of course, you need then a synchronous communication. You cannot leave the learners then alone. So this is the influencing factor, learning object. And the last influencing factor is the organizational framework, of course. You have there the typical things like time, human resources, technology, and of course, money, which is very influencing on the blended learning arrangement that you have here. This refers, for example, to this, how you do the e-learning parts, the learning media there. You don't need thousands of euros to do a good blended learning scenario and to do a good e-learning. It's always good to have more money, and it's always good to make very interesting learning media, but you have to start with good connection between these forms of learning, and with a good didactical conception beforehand with these influencing factors. Then you can reach most of the learning objectives you want to reach. So from there on, from this common sense now of blended learning, if we switch to the next slide, please. I have put together, the lessons learned from our projects that we did in the last years regarding the implementation and the organization of blended learning scenarios. And I have 5 points that I want to go through with you now. On the next slide, the first point is your organizational framework. So keep it small and simple and start now is always my introducing sentence, because if you keep it small at the start, like 8 to 20 or 30 hours unit of your curriculum, and not want to change the whole of the curriculum at first and at one step, then you can handle everything. Then you know how to handle, use familiar technique and tools, and the learning content. Use the learning content you're used to. You have already taught. So do not change everything at once. This keeps your piloting module and your first module you want to start with. You can handle this still. On the next slide, on your learning objects, on your learning objectives and your learning content. The didactic concept needs to be needs a detailed planning. From the learning objectives, you think about what learning contents I have and what learning form matches here. So this is a little bit what I already showed with the graphic. So on a schedule level, on a very like a not micro maker on the if you look at it on a schedule level, so you see how many webinars I need, how many self-directed phases, but then you have to plan it very detailed if you do it for the first time. Then if you did it like 2 or 3 years, then there is no problem or no need to do it that detailed. But if you start, you have to to plan very detailed the synchronous communication in your webinars, in your virtual classroom, and very important, the last point, the learning objectives and the self-learning phases, because this is most of the time the really new thing that you have to think exactly, because there on the next slide we are at your target group again. And if you think about your target group, you always need at first a very good concept of assistance, of coaching the target group, the learners you have, because of the under and overload of the learning content. Then think about, do my learners already know the learning content on the one hand, but not only the learning content, also the type of learning. Are they used to blended learning? Do they know that or not? If they do not know it, then you have to think about a very intensive assistance during this self-directed and self-paced learning phases. And you should think about the tools you use then via a learning management system, that you can chat with them, that you have different, perhaps some points that you have for 1 hour. You can the learners can reach you and you can help, you can answer their questions and stuff like that. So this is a very important point. And look after as much as you need, not as much as you can, because then very often you do too much. So think exactly and plan it exactly like as your target group needs it. On the next slide then, the point of view is the role as a trainer, your role as a trainer in vocational education. This is changing a lot because the instructor is in the last years not the person you have to be in your classes. We had to change from instructive and being an instructor to a learning process facilitator that is more coaching. You need to give the learners more plan, more structure with the blended learning during these different using these different learning forms. And you have to link between the different forms of learning. This is the most important point for a trainer in vocational education. So guiding and coaching your learners and the different learning types of your learners to the different learning media and forms of learning you have prepared in this scenario, in this individual learning journey, as you want to. And therefore, if you do this, then you give security. Then they feel secure, the learners, and then they can develop a self-paced and a self-directed learning, which we all need to be flexible in the future. The learning content and the knowledge base is not the focus anymore. So, and in the last slide then, again, back to the technology, of course. Double check the technology. That's always a good choice. I mean, for example, beforehand this conference, we checked all our technique we use today, the laptop, my headset, the software we are using. So never change a running system is the first sentence. I mean, if everything works fine with your hardware, the computer is all right, the internet connection is doing well, your headset is good, the people can hear you, and it's not disturbing the classes and the teaching and the webcam, then leave it like this, especially in the first times you do it. Later on, if you are very experienced, then you can change without problems and very fast. But start with this, what works and what is functioning very good. Also with the software, with the webinar software, there are millions of tools. Also the collaboration tools. Relax. You don't have to use every new technology in the same moment. As I said, the most important thing is the didactic conception, and take the learners, the target group in the middle, and focus on it. And because still we wanna develop competences and not using technology because there is new technology. So use the technology. Stay curious and use it, but don't let you overwhelm with all the new things that are around, because every day you have 10 new apps that you can use in collaboration tools or as a new webinar software or whatever. So these are the lessons learned that we found out after years in projects with teaching blended learning concepts and the sustainable implementation of blended learning. I hope this was interesting for you and gets you an idea, or perhaps some new points that you perhaps didn't think about on blended learning and how you can implement it and teach in that way in vocational training. Now, thank you very much. And on the last slide of our presentation, you will find my contact. But at first, now Isabella and I are still happy to answer any questions there. This is what I wanted to say. You find in the presentation my contact if you have any more questions, and perhaps we have no time right now, but there you can still write an email, for example, or contact me. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much to you, Ms Isabella Hlabangu, and also to Mr. Martin Winkler for talking us through so many interesting concepts about, it's great that we're talking about the future, but from this presentation, it's apparent that that future is already upon us, because already the classroom has migrated online. Teachers are having to make sure that they've got the right lights, the right headsets, the right cameras, and the most appropriate software. And we're very much in that reality at the moment. I love the thoughts about, change the approach from the teacher to the guide and the coach, and let's really support a more independent way of learning. So thank you very much for your insights, and we do appreciate the dedication of the South African German Chamber towards the work that's being done by educators across the country, and also with the support of the Sasol Foundation and its partners such as the Kagiso Trust and also Adcorp. Talking about training, our afternoon is all about getting practical and engaging with you in the various workshops where you will apply what you've learned.
Lerato, I hate to interrupt you, but don't you think it's time for another break? I can sense the human need to refresh their imbibements and create refocus through physical exertion. What I mean is, can I offer to take you for a coffee again?
I'd love a coffee. And you know what, Sam, it's clear to me you're really a really charming guy. You're a charmer. Ladies and gentlemen, we are absolutely going to take a break, as Sam has suggested. However, please listen carefully to what I have to say next, because it applies to what will be happening after the break. So, after the break, we're going to ask you to navigate the Breakaways tab, which is found on the website of the ATTC virtual conference. In the afternoon, there are going to be these interactive breakaway sessions with your colleagues and also with the session chairs. What you need to do is simply click on the Breakaways tab in order to join that session. What will happen is a different platform will open up, and there you'll need to log in by adding your email address, because your email address is effectively your username. So Breakaways tab, different platform opens up. You log in using your email address. You then create a unique password. But you only just do this once to log in. Once you've sorted that out, that's all you need. Breakaways tab, email address, a new password. And then what happens, Sam?
This workshop platform is great, Lerato. It provides the ability for people to have a meeting around a table and hear and see each other. And then the presenter can call attention to the stage and move the audience into a presentation mode to ensure everyone is able to hear and see the content.
Absolutely correct, Sam. And so just note that there are 5 concurrent workshops happening this afternoon, okay? Please check carefully through the relevant links that you've been sent so that you can navigate to the correct room where you are supposed to be for the chosen workshop where you're meant to be. Once you've clicked the link, there's just a very short sort of a technical thing, like Martin Winkler was saying, just to check your camera, your mic, to make sure you can see, they can see you, and you can communicate with your colleagues in the session. Effectively, you'll then find yourself now in the workshop setting. And there'll be chairs set around the tables, and I'm talking virtual chairs. So what you then do is you double click on an empty chair. So you're in the session now, you know who your colleagues are, your microphone's working, your headset's working. Now you look for the configuration of chairs. The empty chair that you find, double click on it so that you hop on between tables to connect with your colleagues. It's much like going to the movies. You know, when you don't want to go to the booth and you want to get a ticket from the machine, just double click in that way and choose where you're going to be sitting.
If you have any problems, you can visit the help desk on the floor plan. Just double click any of the chairs at the help desk and one of the friendly technical crew will assist. I have also sent a message to you, so check your device as you're connecting through to the workshops.
Absolutely. So as Sam has said, we're taking a short break now. Use it for a coffee, use it for a quick sandwich. This is also going to give you an opportunity just in this next half hour to just log on to the workshop link, explore how it works, network with your workshop attendees as well, and just get yourself prepped for what you're going to be doing this afternoon. In terms of the plenary, that's where we leave it for today. So you won't be seeing myself or Sam, I think, for the rest of the day. However, the annual Technical Teachers Conference will be continuing, yes, this afternoon with the workshops, and tomorrow for day 2. That's when we will return, 9 a.m. sharp. And why am I stressing 9 a.m. sharp, ladies and gentlemen? You don't want to be late because, as we had today, we've got some really dynamic, insightful presentations that are going to be made tomorrow. You don't want to miss out on any of them. So if we start on time, we finish on time, and you can really just make sure that it feeds into your deliberations tomorrow. So 9 a.m. tomorrow. Anything else, Sam?
Just that it has been a pleasure working with you, Lerato, and I have enjoyed my time today learning from our speakers and interacting with our delegates as we have moved through our Day 1 agenda. I look forward to meeting you all again tomorrow for an even more exciting and interesting day. Thank you and goodbye.
Well, goodbye, Sam. But don't forget, you're taking me out for coffee, so don't run away. Don't be that guy. Also, it is goodbye from me. Yes, please log on to the breakaway session tabs. Get onto the link that links you to your workshop. But if you've got it mastered, also know that on the conference site are exhibitions and exhibitors that allow you to see what else is happening within the industry. So you can click on the exhibitors page and just have a look, network with your colleagues as well in that way. As Sam has said, that's it from the two of us today. We look forward to joining you again tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. Please enjoy your afternoon workshop sessions. Please take advantage of the skills you're learning as you navigate the portals and the different functionality of the site. That's part of immersing yourself. That's part of skills development. And that's part of really infusing the technologies of the 4IR in your engagements with colleagues. It's the essence of what this 5th Annual Technical Teachers Conference is about. And also, chat with each other. Gossip, chat, learn, speak to each other, probe your session teachers and administrators. From all of us, it's been wonderful, it's been enlightening, it's been educational. We thank you for your time. See you tomorrow, 9 a.m.